In life, to really set yourself apart, you have to be 10 times better or different. And it's a lot easier to be different than it is to be 10 times better.
Welcome to Divot, the community for people making their mark on the world. Every week, I sit down with the greatest minds in business, tech, sports, and entertainment to uncover the moments, decisions, and lessons that shape their journey so you can shape yours. Go to divot.org to learn more. Subscribe at YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify.
Divot.
Today, we're in Salt Lake City with our guest, Mike Maughan. After earning a degree from Harvard Kennedy School, he spent more than a decade at Qualtrics, helping grow it into a global leader. During that time, he co-founded Five for the Fight, a cancer research movement that's raised over $50 million to fight cancer. He co-hosted Freakonomics' hit podcast, No Stupid Questions, reaching over 50 million downloads in over 200 countries. Today, as an executive at Smith Entertainment Group, he works on the Utah Jazz, played a key role on the team acquiring the Utah Mammoth NHL franchise, and is also working on an ambitious effort to reimagine downtown Salt Lake City. This conversation is about building causes, brands, and communities that leave a lasting mark. Hope you enjoy it.
Mike, thanks for being here. Tell us about where we are.
Well, thank you so much for having me. We're here in downtown Salt Lake City. Salt Lake is an incredible place. We have a lot going on here and a lot of opportunity to make it even better. So we're just a couple of blocks from the Delta Center, where the Utah Jazz and Utah Mammoth, which is the name of the new NHL team we have, play. And then you've got a huge convention center right behind us, the Symphony Hall, and a lot of places that we're going to kind of be reimagining as we look toward the future of this state.
Talk to me about this $3 billion project that's happening downtown, this sort of partnership between what you all are doing at Smith Entertainment Group, the city and the state, and everyone else in between.
Yeah. What's fascinating right now is that you see this in every major city across the world, especially in the United States, but any economist would tell you that there is a natural draw away from an urban core. And so you see that if you're not careful and intentional about investing in an urban core, then most cities, especially the city center, ends in disarray and decay because it just falls apart. So every generation sort of has to carry the torch of city building if you're going to keep an urban core strong. The reason that matters is with a strong urban core, you get strong suburban cores and it has massive ripple effects. And so what was amazing is when Smith Entertainment Group announced that they were bringing an NHL team to Utah, it became kind of this catalyzing force where everybody said, okay, if we're going to do that, why don't we not waste this opportunity, but also utilize it to reimagine our downtown and think about what it can look like for the next several generations. And it became kind of our generation's turn to reimagine the downtown, to invest in the urban core. If you don't do that, you end up with what economists refer to as a donut, which is just has this hole in the middle with nothing, right? And so this was our opportunity to say, okay, let's invest. And it brought a lot of different groups together and gave us an opportunity to dream in a much bigger way than I think many people have been able to for generations.
When you went out and researched and looked at what other people were doing, what did you see that you liked? What did you see that you thought wouldn't work here? Is there anything unique that comes to Salt Lake City that can't really be done anywhere else?
I think, well, a lot of things I think that are unique to Utah, some good, some opportunities for growth. What is amazing, though, is when you look at kind of these urban cores and how you want to invest in them, the primary thing that allows you to differentiate yourself, which is not unique to Utah, but are these what we call singular entities. If you think about it, if a restaurant goes out of business, another restaurant can come take its place. If an NBA team leaves, it's not like there's another NBA team just waiting to jump in. Same with NHL, same with a major convention center, same with a symphony orchestra. It's not like there's another symphony orchestra. So these singular entities are what really provide the core of these urban areas that allow you to then invest. And so we're very fortunate here. We've been very clear, this is not just a sports and entertainment center. There's a trend all across the world where you build these 120 acre sports and entertainment centers. Frankly, as we looked across the state of Utah, land was never the issue. There are a dozen places we could go build an epic sports and entertainment center. We've always referred to this as sports, entertainment, culture, and convention because it is one of those unique places where you have a museum, you have a symphony orchestra, you have convention, and then you also have the sports and entertainment piece. But to have all of those married in one urban core, in one central spot, is pretty unique and allows us to dream in a bit of a different way.
In an increasingly digital world, how do you create a physical space that people are willing to get out of their homes and come down to and just spend time? What are the key components?
This is one of the things I'm actually most excited about and that I believe most strongly. In the age of AI, where more and more of our world will be taking place in a digital space or we'll be doing less and less ourselves, I think in-person events and live entertainment will become astronomically more important over the next decade and beyond than they even are today. I mean, if you think about, I finished a marathon, did not run the marathon, but finished a marathon about a year and a half ago. We woke up at like 3 in the morning, took a bus up a canyon, and sat there for an hour, hour and a half in the freezing cold, in the dark of early morning, before we could even start the race, so that then thousands of people can run together. Why do we do that? If I just wanted to do 26.2 miles, I could go easily, well, I could go do that, right? I don't know if I could easily do that, but one could just go do that. But there's something about gathering together and working on something hard together or doing something exciting together. And a lot of people have this worry, well, in the age of AI, anyone can watch a basketball game and feel like they're sitting courtside. Anyone can go watch a hockey game and maybe have the vantage point of being right on the glass behind the goal. Totally fair, and I think we'll have amazing experiences like that. But because so much of our world is moving in a different direction, I think in person, and especially live sports and live entertainment, will take a massively outsized impact because people do want to gather. Human beings are social animals at our core. Even the most introverted person enjoys some interaction, right? And there's this element of gathering together that I think is not in opposition to the direction the world's heading, but in fact, exactly the thing that the world will cherish most as we head this direction with AI.
You talking about your career, one of the really interesting things about you is you've connected across so many different sectors. You've been in tech, you've been in politics a little bit, you have been in sports, you've been in real estate. How do all those things make sense? Why have you kind of seen yourself, finding these different areas, but do they all come together somehow?
It's interesting. I don't know that life ever makes sense, right? I love the Steve Jobs Stanford commencement address where he just says, don't connect the dots. I don't know if you watched that, but he talks about how he took a calligraphy class just because he thought it was interesting. That formed the basis of all of Apple's fonts, but he had no idea that that's the direction it would go.
Yeah.
Right? I think that a life that is planned, and God bless the people who can do that. Like, I'm not one of them. I had no idea what I want to do when I grow up. I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. As young people are quick to tell me I already
what
have
age
grown
is
up.
growing up
Yeah,
exactly?
seriously. I have no idea. But what I would say is this, I look at my life based on decision-making criteria, and that's how I decide what I want to do. At this stage in my life, my decision-making criteria is very simple. 3 things. I want to work with good people, and I want to work on things that are both interesting and impactful. Like, if I'm going to spend my time on it, it better have a big impact, right? I don't want to just work on little things here and there. I want it to be interesting because I want it to keep my attention. I want it to be challenging, all those things. That's what I mean by interesting. I want it to be impactful, and I have no patience for working with people who aren't good people. And so for me, when I look at those things, it's like, is this working with good people? Is this something that's interesting? And is this something that will have a big impact? That might seem disjointed to people that are like, oh, you worked in presidential politics, and then you worked in real estate, and then you worked in technology. It's not if you look at the decision-making frameworks. And I think too often we don't have a framework. We don't know why we're deciding or how we're making decisions. But if you're able to determine what matters to you and lay out a framework for your decisions, then you can see how things start to make sense because they're laid out based on principle rather than just making episodic decisions every time you come to a fork in the road.
How do you know if somebody is good people or not?
One, I care about how they treat other people. I care deeply if they're honest. I don't have any patience for dishonesty or a lack of integrity. I think it's very revealing of who somebody is. And I want someone who treats everybody well. I'm not saying that you don't engage in forgiveness. I'm very grateful that when I've had a bad day, most people, I think, recognize that that was maybe a bad day or a bad moment, not indicative of who I am as a human. I also want to be very generous in my forgiveness or willingness to give someone the benefit of the doubt that maybe that was a bad day or a bad moment. I'm not going to hold that against you. But I think people show patterns over time. If you treat people poorly, or you're only kind to people who have more power or more money or something to give you, that's not someone I want to be around. If you only care about yourself, if you are not honest or trustworthy, or won't be a person of your word. Look, we all have legal documents that are thicker than any book you've ever read because they help us make sure that if anything goes wrong, we've looked at every contingency. Most agreements that I love, we have those and we never look at them again because they're honest people that you can look in the eye, and when something comes up, you can figure it out together.
What does it mean when you say you don't want to work with somebody that doesn't have integrity?
My mother is amazing, and all growing up,
But you wouldn't work with her?
she would put little quotes on our bathroom mirror. And one of the ones that she taped to the mirror when I was in junior high school said integrity at the top. And then the definition was having the moral courage to make your actions consistent with your knowledge of right and wrong. Having the moral courage to make your actions consistent with your knowledge of right and wrong. I would guess that every one of my siblings can recite that because she would always put these quotes on the bathroom mirror, right? When I say I don't want to work with someone of integrity, again, I think people reveal themselves through their actions and their decisions pretty quickly. I can tell, and we forget sometimes. I always try to remind myself that life is long and the world is small, meaning that you can never burn a bridge because somehow life is very long. You're gonna run into those people again, and the world is very small. Your reputation will always precede you. There are some people who want to work with us right now, but I know what they have done in many other agreements, and there's no way I'm going to engage, no matter how nice you are to me, right? On the flip side of that, I always remind myself that life is really short and the world is big. I know that's the opposite of what I just said, but life is so much shorter than I ever dreamt and so much bigger than we could ever dream. Like, get out of your own bubble. Stop being so obsessed with your tiny, G.K. Chesterton called it our tiny, tawdry little universe in which your own plot is always being played. And I think the more you get outside of yourself, outside of your own bubble, whatever that is, the more likely you are to be a person of integrity because you're not so tied into this moment or this deal or this situation, and you can see this bigger, broader world and that life's short and you don't want to be that kind of person.
As you were talking, I remembered this experience from years ago in my software company where we were going to lose an account, and my team said, "Hey, will you send this email to their CEO who I knew?" And I read the email, and it didn't like throw the team under the bus, but it kind of like said they dropped the ball a little bit and really they should use us. And I read it, and I said to the team, I said, I don't feel good about this. I don't think it's going to go well, and I don't really know these people. But I got kind of pushed into sending it, and that was on me. And I've never heard anything back from that email except for people who I have heard who have heard about that email. No one ever talked to me directly about it. I don't even know the people that it was talking about.
Right.
And here, all these years later, I'm trying to figure out who these people were and who I hurt and how to repair it. It was one, 5-minute thing, 10 years ago. And yeah. I'm still thinking about it. And I think, this idea that like we're playing a multi-decade game. We're having a multi-decade experience. And it's true that it's not that you can't be forgiven, as you said. It's not that you can't have a second chance. But if you become kind of known for doing this kind of work or being this kind of person over and over again, it is very hard for people to kind of see you in a completely different light than that.
Absolutely. And I don't have many regrets. I have a lot of things I do differently, a lot of mistakes that I've made. One of the biggest regrets I have is I spent way too much of my life working with some toxic people. And if I could go back to a younger Mike Maughan, I know no one wears lapels anymore, I would grab myself by the lapels and slam myself against a wall and say it's not worth spending 1 minute of your life with toxic people.
What would you describe as a toxic person?
A narcissist. I mean, someone who's out for themselves. Any good leader or person or teammate that you want to work with is there to help you and the organization be better. There are so many people who want to be right. I want to work with the people who want to get it right, right? And so we talk a lot about, okay, let's pause really quick. Am I acting this way because I want to be right? Well, that's just ego. Or do I want to get it right? And if we want to get it right, then it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to fail. It's okay to try something new. It's okay. We have to make it safe to fail. Organizations with all high performers often struggle because no one is willing to say the dumb thing. No one's willing to offer the bad idea. But so often it's the dumb idea that clearly isn't going to work, but I feel comfortable saying it. Hey, this is maybe way off the wall, but what about this? That leads you to the right place. But if we've created a culture where everyone feels like they have to be perfect and I have to be on my game and I'm really worried about what everybody else is going to think about me, then I'm not willing to say the dumb thing, and then often we never get to the optimal solution.
It feels like the best leaders always have the door open a little bit. Like I've emailed some of the most successful people in the world, cold emailed them, and they will respond at 5 minutes later at 2:30 in the morning to a cold email from me to like, yes, I'm interested enough to hear what you're saying for a minute. And, and at the same time, you see people who are way, way less successful, who are like completely shut off to it or won't hear ideas or who keep their door locked in because they don't, want the air to get out or whatever. And, but over and over again, you see, I don't know, the best people, like in some ways they're more open than anybody. It doesn't mean they'll do anything, or it doesn't mean, they won't say no. They will say no, but they listen and they at least hear the feedback. And I think like that, whether it's someone who's at the top of the chain or your manager or your director or your VP, like you want somebody who, as you describe, is at least going to be open enough to like brainstorm, hear the idea, think thoughtfully about it without just, hey, no good ideas coming from here, or maybe it's not this, thinking maybe it's not this idea, but it's some iteration of this idea, and good ideas really do come from anywhere.
I mean, I know that I am this like disciple of in-person things right now, but that's why I think working in person in the workplace is so powerful. I think we forget how many amazing ideas or how much innovation happens by virtue of a random salesperson and a random engineer going to get a drink at the same time who just happen to be talking to one another. And when you cross-pollinate these ideas from different parts of the org, then magic things can happen, right? When we were in the midst of COVID and everything was Zoom, it shouldn't have been, but one of the biggest surprises to me personally was who I worked with every day. Because suddenly every meeting was with these set groups of people. And I realized that so much of my interaction at the office was with people that I didn't have a formal meeting with ever. But so many of the ideas that were generated and opportunities and ways we thought about doing things came from those informal interactions where people with different ways of looking at the world and different job responsibilities, who in no way would formally interact, get together. And that's where some of the most innovation and some of the most creative thinking comes.
I've heard you say something pretty unique, which is that you shouldn't follow your passions, but you should try to find big problems to solve instead. Yeah. What does that mean?
So let me clarify. I didn't say that. I read that in a Harvard Business Review article many years ago.
Why are you trying to take credit for this person?
Yeah, I want to take credit.
Something that
Clay, have you heard of the Bible? I wrote that. No, so but I read this long ago in a Harvard Business Review article. It said, "Don't follow your passions. Find big problems to solve." And I think it's amazing advice. One, we often think that our passion is some lower order passion, like I care so much about X, but really it's the principle behind it. So one, take a step back sometimes. But the biggest opportunities you'll ever have in your life come from solving massive problems. And that's where I think it goes back to kind of the decision-making criteria I set for myself. Work with good people on things that are interesting and impactful. If you're working on something that's big, that's really hard, that's a challenging problem to solve, that will inherently be exciting. That will inherently get you working with other really great people. That will allow you to interact and exercise every single faculty you have and your imagination and your brain at its core. And sometimes, if we're just focused on our passion, it's about ourselves and what I want versus how I can most contribute to the world or bless the most lives. And I think that naturally, when we start focusing elsewhere, we find that that really enlivens who we are. But if we're focusing on a selfish path of just what I care about, we actually end up without the thing we sought from the beginning.
How do I know if a problem that I'm thinking about working on is actually big enough to draw that out of me?
I think we worry about perfection. I've been teaching this class, undergraduate class at the university the last several years. The thing that has shocked me the most is the angst with which these kids enter the workforce. It's like the first job they get out of college is going to set the trajectory of their entire life, and if they pick the wrong one, then it's over. And I just want to be like, you guys, it's okay. If you pick the wrong job or the wrong career or the wrong grad school, start over. I hope that everyone, when they enter a marriage, enters a really happy one. Also, if you marry someone and it's not the right fit, it's okay. Marriage is one of the many decisions we make in life, so find a better marriage if it doesn't work out. Like, it's not the end of the road. The beauty of life is that we can make other decisions and course correct. I say that because we put too much pressure on ourselves to be like, is this the big problem I'm supposed to solve? Is this how I'm supposed to spend my life? I don't know. Try it. If it's a fit, great. If it's not, find a different problem.
I thought you were going to say that if you find that you've picked the wrong job and you're headed to a dead end, don't worry, you're only going to be disappointing your parents. But your answer was much better.
That's only true in some cultures.
That's right. I think too, it's how long are you willing to spend on it? Small ideas, like some of the best big ideas start out as small ideas.
Yeah.
And so like you don't, in the creative process, you don't necessarily know where it's going to go, to the point of the dots and Steve Jobs. Like, and not all small ideas become big ideas. Sometimes they do, most of the time they don't, but maybe it's just being really honest with yourself and taking the right, like really listening to the feedback. There's this this thing people say about like, when should you stop working on your company? When should you give up your startup?
Yeah.
And there's all sorts of answers, but the right answer, the smartest people always say the same thing. Only the founder knows.
Yeah.
The founder knows when it's the end, and that's when it's the end. And if the founder says it's not the end, then that's not the end. And I think, but it's like being honest about it, that like, if you're not getting any good feedback on this thing you're working on, if like, I think for me, when I'm trying to get new ideas going, it doesn't have to like, everything have to work, but like, I'm looking for some unique kernels that are like, okay, that's special. That's unique. This thing, with this podcast, I was on a call with somebody the other day, somebody that lived hours away from me, a random person that I got introduced to from some random person. And they said, the craziest thing, 2 days ago, someone told me to listen to your podcast. And I was like, who is that? Like, that's shocking. Is it like one of my relatives? It's like, did you talk to my mom? Like, who are you talking to? But it's like that, that little kernel is like, okay, like that's an interesting, unique piece of feedback. And like, I think I should listen to that. Like, maybe I'll like push a little bit further when I might, be thinking, oh, I'm not, this isn't going anywhere, or it is, but we got to be honest about the feedback. And if we're not, incorporating that honest feedback, then, maybe we are headed down the wrong path.
I think it's fascinating, this idea of when do I quit? When do I try something new? When do I just grit it out and keep going? And it's really hard to know. To your point, usually no one knows but the person themselves, or in a company, the founder. Sometimes that's not true. I mean, I think that's often true, but not always. And I think it's really important to be able to make that distinction. That's part of why having good people around you is so important. What I would say I've observed in some of the greatest leaders I've ever known is that they are people who have high ego and high humility. And I know those seem in direct contrast to each other. They are arrogant enough or egotistical enough or whatever that is to believe that they uniquely can power this idea or do this thing or make this happen or dream big. They have high ego, but they marry that with a high level of humility where they're open to other ideas. They're open to people giving them feedback. They're open to the fact that I don't need to be the smartest person in the room. And that's a really, really rare marriage, I think. And I haven't seen it often. I've seen a lot of high ego and I've seen a lot of humility. But I think the greatest leaders have a healthy, weird mix of two things that seem diametrically opposed. And so you can listen to someone who tells you, no, it's time to stop, or yes, let's go this way. One of the jokes we make in business all the time are about all the buzzwords of synergy and double clicking. But pivot is a real word and a real thing that we overuse. But that's what's also amazing is the best people that I think I see often, it's not that they quit or that they have to pull back. It's how do we take all of these learnings and pivot into the next thing. Now, maybe that means the same team like Stuart at Slack did, where he pivots into something related but totally different, and it's not gaming, but they were using this thing. Maybe it's that we shutter this completely and move on to the next one. But it's this idea that people know how to pivot because they have high ego and high humility.
I've heard Angela Duckworth, the author of Grit, say about you that she said she thinks that you're somebody that has a passion for helping people. And as I have seen you and interacted with you and heard people talking about you, I think this is a really great way of describing you. Where does that passion come from? What sort of drives you? What's your compass towards, helping, what actually help you provide, where you go too far, where you don't go enough? Like, how do you think about helping people?
I'll tell you a conversation Angela and I had that goes back to what you asked a minute ago. We were at an apartment in New York. We were sitting with Stephen Dubner. We were talking about starting some podcast that we all ultimately decided never to do. It was a bad idea. Well, years later, we did a different one. But we're all in this apartment. We're thinking about this. And as we're having breakfast, before we get the business meeting started, I asked Angela about passion. And Dubner would tell you that he thinks the worst advice on earth is follow your passion. Angela wrote a whole book on grit, which is passion and perseverance leads to the fulfillment of long-term goals. That's what grit is, right? And so I said my passion in life, I thought, was working on healthcare in sub-Saharan Africa. That's what I love doing. I've spent so much time and effort and energy on different projects related to healthcare in sub-Saharan Africa. But I said I'm at Qualtrics now, and the cause to which Qualtrics has chosen to kind of dedicate its efforts is cancer and defeating cancer and specifically supporting great cancer research. And so I said I had a choice. I could follow my passion and do a little bit in this corner of life, or I could steer the huge ship of Qualtrics and other companies we work with on cancer and do something much bigger. So I said, I disagree with your follow your passion thing. And that's where she said, I think you misunderstand passion. She said, your passion isn't this or that. Your passion is probably helping people. And so you find ways to do that wherever you do it. So it helped me think through, maybe I misunderstand passion or I think of it in too narrow a way. Now, in terms of like, why is that my passion? I have no idea. I think it seems so good and noble. It's probably a selfish pursuit. The same way that some people love to go run, or I don't know if you run a triathlon, participate in triathlons, you bike swim it too. I really love to go do stuff like that. And that's fine. That's what I love to do. But I don't think I'm any better or more noble because of that. It's just something I love.
It's not something you actively said, I'm going to go be like that. It's just something that is innately in you, or has sort of been cultivated through life experience, or
I think
discovered over time that like, this is like, I'm good at this and I enjoy spending my time in this way.
I love people. When somebody, I can't remember where I heard the story or who it's about, but someone else gets credit. But there was a notebook or something where people would write their name and their hobby when they stayed at someone's home, and someone wrote that their hobby was people.
Yeah.
And I actually love that idea. I love the concept. People are my hobby, and that, like, I love to learn from people. That's why I love travel so much.
Yeah.
I love to observe a new culture. I love to experience life in a different way. I love to, again, get out of my bubble and see what it's like and different perspectives. I think it's really healthy when you show up somewhere and not only has nobody ever heard of you, but they know nothing about your company. They don't know about the things you've invested in. They don't know about whether so-and-so got promoted or not. It really puts in perspective that nobody cares about any of the things that aren't important.
Yeah. Do you just love like groups of people, or are there any specific people you love?
I love you, Derek.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for there. Say it in the camera if you would.
I love Derek Anderson.
Now we have our promo. It's great. You talked about your work in cancer research. What is Five for the Fight?
Five for the Fight is a cancer charity that invites everyone to give $5 for the fight against cancer. So the idea was crowdfunding for cancer research. Amazing that we have so many people over the history of the last century or so who've written really large checks. But it's also really beautiful when you give people the opportunity to donate on an individual basis or crowdfunding. So often when someone's diagnosed with cancer, it's like, there's nothing I can do. This was an attempt to give people something that they could do, an opportunity where you can say, I can't do much, but I can skip my latte this morning, and I can give $5 for the fight against cancer. We've since broadened that. It was Five for the Fight was the first cause-related jersey patch in the history of North American professional sports. We put it on the Utah Jazz jersey long before Ryan and Ashley Smith had dreamt of owning the team, right? And over the course of 6 years, raised $50 million and started an amazing partnership with Huntsman Cancer Institute here in Utah and with Howard and Morehouse universities, helping to diversify the field of medicine and stuff like that, and getting more diverse talent into the cancer research pipeline, stuff like that.
I was reading that 1 in 5 people will have cancer in their life, but I think the impact, you tell me, like some huge percentage of the population actually has a direct family member, like a sibling, a parent, a grandparent who actually has had cancer. It's almost everyone.
I mean, if we were in a large conference room or speaking to a group and you asked who's been impacted by cancer, either personally or someone, you know, a close friend or loved one, I've never been in a room where every hand didn't go up.
When you did this jersey patch, like it was kind of a crazy idea.
It was the craziest idea.
What was people's reaction when they first heard it?
I think that a lot of people loved it. This goes back to one of the great principles of business and life that I think is true. And I don't know who said this either, but I've loved it. In life, to really set yourself apart, you have to be 10 times better or different. And it's a lot easier to be different than it is to be 10 times better. So if you think about this, when we were trying to do a jersey patch and we thought, you know, Qualtrics is in the stages of needing to get more legitimacy and relevance, it needs more attention, it's pre-IPO, this is the time to put Qualtrics on a jersey patch so that everybody knows what it is. So when you go list on the NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange, people are familiar, they know you're legitimate. When your salespeople are making calls, it's not like, is this some random company with 10 people, or is it legit and I can invest a bunch of money and time to launch the program? Fine, but we have a few things here. At Qualtrics, one of our principles was all in. So are we serious? Are we all in on cancer research as a cause? Yes or no? And that makes you ask the question, do I mean what I say or do I just say what I say? And then the other thing you have to consider is, okay, fine, if you want to go put your name on a jersey, everybody was doing that. Now, we were the 5th jersey patch announced, so Five for the Fight, it was the 5th jersey. Awesome how that worked out. But it was sort of like, if we're going to do what everybody else is doing, I don't think it's worth doing at all. Or, because there's no way to be 10x better in that moment. But I can be different. And so if you look at just the media, we got 14 times, not 14, 14 times the amount of press coverage on our patch than any other patch over the course of that process. Now, that wasn't the goal. The goal is to end cancer. If that's the goal, then we failed, right? But we've made great strides toward it. We're doing good things and we're figuring out how to support the very best researchers in the world and amplify their research a little more quickly. But it also takes people who think differently. And that's where I think it's so important to do something different. And that's the main lesson I take away from at least the inaugural pitch of the patch.
What I found in this ethos of Silicon Valley, which is widely talked about and used, which is to help first, is that like doing any service, when you sort of put someone else's needs before your own, it strangely ends up helping you solve your own. And Fight for the Fight, which I think was done for all the right reasons and was a totally selfless, real cause that you all put your heart and soul into to just do good. As you said, like, strangely or not, like, you ended up getting 14x the impact that other people got. Qualtrics didn't get all of that, but you got enough of it. And so it's like this idea of Cotopaxi is another, like, this is like their motto, right? Like, do good. And you see people like really resonate with that model, even if they wear the clothes or don't wear the clothes, or use the products or don't. But it's like they've kind of put something bigger, a bigger mission outside of just like bags and clothes, and something that actually can have an impact on the world, and it ends up having a huge positive impact on their business.
And I think that's an amazing outgrowth, right? But you still have to do it because it's the right thing to do. Otherwise, it doesn't have the same impact. Yes, life is a series of deposits and withdrawals. You should always be putting in more deposits than withdrawals. But at the same time, if people know that you're just reaching out in order to eventually be able to withdraw, that doesn't work, right? So at the end of the day, you still have to do it for the right reason. And awesome that there are a bunch of great ripple effects, positive externalities that result, but that can't be why you do it.
One really unique thing about you is you have a lot of close friends, or at least you have people that feel like they are your close friends. And I know you'd say they are.
Will you tell them to call me once in a while?
No, I've seen your Instagram. I know, like, this is you have, from my perception and people that I talk to, I know random people I've never told you about who think they're very close with you. They probably are, but it's more about you than it is about them. And I wonder, like, how do you think real relationships actually get built? How do you cultivate relationships that end up feeling, I mean, you have as much time as anybody, but from the outside, it seems like you've been able to cultivate so many more relationships than most people do. How do you do that?
I don't know, and I don't do it intentionally. I will say this, that I'm certain that people who watch and listen to this podcast can prove what I'm about to say wrong. I'm not familiar with any great startup that has ever come from a bunch of MBAs sitting around a whiteboard listing gaps in ideas and what if we did this, right? Like, I don't know of any that have emerged that way. Similarly with relationships or friendships, I'm not super familiar with many where people are like, oh, let's go to this networking session, or the people who you most want to network with are probably not there because they're not looking for more people, right? I do think I have a unique ability that I don't know where it came from to earn trust quickly, but I think I also give trust quickly. One of the axioms that if you were chiseling something into a stone surface saying that this is something I believe, I will never lie to you. I will absolutely lie to you and tell you you look good in this, or I love the banana bread you made, or that I'm going to lie to you like everybody else because that's okay, right? But I mean, in terms of anything substantive, if we're doing a deal together, if we're talking about anything real, I will never lie to you. I shoot straight. I'll tell you the bad news and the good news. I'll walk you through, like, hey, I can't do that, but you need X, I can't do Y, so let's find a different way to get there. And I think that kind of relationship, even on friendships, and that kind of honesty and that kind of directness, I think leads to some immediate trust. But also, I think just like be an interesting human and be an interested human. and you'll find great people. I mean, I think you've been to my house, but I had a meeting with Ariana Huffington, who I love. It was supposed to be 30 minutes. It was Ryan Smith and I, and then it turned into an hour, and then 2 hours, and then 3.5 hours. And I just genuinely said to Ariana as we were leaving, I said, Ariana, I just have to know, like, where does this art come from in your office? I like loved it. It was amazing. And she was so flattered, but I was also so sincere. This was not one of those like, oh, let's build a relationship. Your art looks nice. Like, I loved her art, and she could tell I was passionate, and I was. And then she said, pick any piece of art in my office, minus the things in my own personal office, and I'll mail it to you. And she did, and it's in my living room now. And like, but I love that piece of art. And Ariana and I bonded because it was real. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't fake authenticity. And so I don't know. These are lessons I'm trying to learn. I'm sure I've failed a million times. But I don't have fake relationships. I have real ones, and I love people, and I'm so grateful to learn from them and think about other people and try to find ways to bless their lives, and they bless yours.
What can someone do to earn someone's trust quickly?
There are few things I prize more than reliability. If I say I'm going to do something, I hope I do it. I'm certain that I fail all the time, and I'll try to do better. But genuinely speaking, do what you say you're going to do. And if you do that and do something well, then I think you have trust all day long. My favorite story that I tell all the time, again, I told you about this undergraduate class that we teach. I went to grad school twice. I can tell you maybe 3 things I learned in all of those years of school. And so I'm under no, imaginary delusion that these kids are like walking out of this class with all this wisdom that we've bestowed upon them. I ask them to remember 5 words. 5 words maybe. Conan O'Brien is host of The Tonight Show. He gets fired. It's very public, very embarrassing. I'd never watched Conan O'Brien in my life. I don't know. I don't even have a TV that I had, but apparently I had a TV at some time whenever he was getting fired. I turned it on, and I happened to be watching the final episode of The Tonight Show as Conan O'Brien is kind of signing off. And in it, he talks about how grateful he is to everybody and how they've showed up for him. And then he kind of ends with this. He says, my final advice to young people, work hard and be kind. And he said, amazing things will happen. And I think in general that if you work hard, meaning not just, that doesn't mean just like show up and work hard. Be reliable. Do what you say you're going to do. Do it really, really well. Be the best in the world at what you've been asked to do. Work hard and be kind. If you're a good person and I want to work with you, you help other people, you don't leave bodies in the street, you're out there to help build something together, you're willing to share credit, you're not insecure and so focused on you all the time. Work hard and be kind. That's, I think, the summation of all of the above.
What's the best way to deliver hard news?
Directly and immediately. I think there's nothing worse than dancing around the table. Deliver it directly and deliver it immediately. I think people respect that. Usually when we're unwilling to give bad news, it's because we're worried about how we are going to feel in the process of delivering it. Of course, worry about the person and how they're going to feel. Do it in the right way. Do it empathetically. Do it kindly. But do it directly. I mean, Shakespeare, we must be cruel to be kind. And that's how you do it.
Whenever I see famous people at the Jazz games, I would say like 90% of the time they're sitting next to you.
Oh, those poor people.
It's either them or their families. So I wonder, what have you learned from these people?
I would 1,000 times rather sit with my family or my friends at a game. Life is not about being around famous people. You know what I mean? I think people are like, wow, that must be so fun. And it's like, sure. I'd still rather be with my friends or my family, right? And so let me just put it out there that like no one should be seeking to know famous people for fame. That's weird, right? I will share with you some of a few lessons from a few people that I've had the opportunity to meet that I do love. Dwayne Wade is part of the ownership group of the Utah Jazz. I'm going to speak hyperbolistically, but that's, I think, okay. I don't know that I've ever met anyone who is more insatiable about learning than Dwayne Wade. When he was playing basketball, he went golfing with Ryan Smith, now owner of the Utah Jazz and Mammoth, and found out, hey, there's this big tech guy there, and just peppered him with a million questions. This is one of the best basketball players of all time, and currently, at the moment, one of the best basketball players. But he knew he needed a second act. He knew there would be a future. And he is constantly learning and asking questions and not afraid to ask the question. And I love and respect and admire it because he's always learning from people who are great at what they do. And I think that's hard to do when if someone thinks they're so great, it's maybe that mix of ego and humility, right? I will say Lindsey Vonn, Lindsey Vonn, one of the greatest skiers of all time. I think you would be hard pressed to find someone who works as hard as she does. I mean, she's constantly working so hard and incredibly gracious, right? I would say all of these, and the last one I'll give you is Shaun White. The thing I love about Shaun is he's incredibly creative, and Shaun is constantly looking behind him to say, what is the next generation of snowboarder? What will the next generation of snowboarders look like? And how can I provide them a better path, a bigger stage, stuff like that? Always giving back on that side. All three of those people work insanely hard and are kind. It's kind of the ethos of who they are. But those are three lessons I've learned from each of those three.
From what you've seen behind closed doors and spending untold amounts of hours with Ryan Smith, the Jazz and Mammoth owner, what makes him such an effective leader and builder?
Ryan is incredibly good at giving people the leeway to run. He trusts people. He hires really great people, surrounds himself with amazing people. There's no drama. Hates drama. I mean, I think all of us do, but it's just, let's have low drama. He is deeply focused on getting it right, not being right. And to that end, he's willing to listen to anybody. I can't begin to express the amount of security that it takes for a person to have to be open to feedback as much as he is. I will speak for myself saying that one of the things I like least in someone that I'm working with is someone who is insecure. And Ryan is a deeply secure individual, not in a way that's like, oh, I got it, leave me alone, but he's so secure in who he is that he knows where he wants to go. And his wife, Ashley, who is his equal in every way and co-owner with him, is the same. But they're so focused on where they want to go and what they want to do that they're completely open and willing at all times to get feedback. Hey, I've been thinking about this. What do you think? Well, let's think about it together. And if it's like, I really wouldn't do that, it's like, okay, I can see that. Let's do something different, right? And I think that's pretty rare, to be that open to feedback, that willing to listen, that willing to surround yourself with strong personalities who may disagree. He does not surround himself with yes people, nor does Ashley. They find great people, but they listen closely. They collaborate meaningfully. And they're willing to listen, willing to learn, willing to try new things, and dream insanely big. I love the idea that there is no room in life for small dreams. And there's no room in life for small dreams. And they've taught me that by example, not in word, over and over and over again.
Two things about Ryan when I think about his leadership. One is that he's an amazing communicator. Like, he can scribble down on a napkin a couple of ideas. It seems like they just sort of populated out of thin air. And then he can go out and deliver the core messages and principles behind it in a way that makes everyone hearing it feel like you're all part of this. And to your point, like, it's not contrived. It's actually very genuine. He actually, he wants to elevate the state's profile. I've heard him talk about this for a decade before he was on TV talking about it. I mean, this is like deeply inside of him, something he's been talking about, and he's been trying to bring people, along and be part of that. And And I think his ability to communicate is and to market in a way that makes people feel a part of it is really unique. The second thing is it's very unique how I've seen him bring people along with him, sort of including people. And there's a story from a tweet that somebody shared that I saw a few months ago at a Mammoth game where they were like yelling down at Ryan from the nosebleeds, which, by the way, that's the only place that me and my dad sat when I was in high school. We sat at the very top row of the Delta Center.
Yeah, same.
When I lived here. So I totally relate to this person. And he yelled down at Ryan and said, "Thank you so much for doing something that helped him with the tickets or the prices or something like that." And Ryan looks back up and says, "Come down, like come hang out with us." And the guy was like, makes his way down, and now here he is before the game, pre-game, like hanging out with the owner, on the ice, like talking, like not for a minute, not for like a handshake, like was hanging out with him. And I thought, like, I've seen him do that. I've seen him have that interaction. This is one that was public, but I've seen dozens and dozens of those kinds of interactions. I've seen it with myself, where I was included in things I had no business being included in. And I think it's you don't see that with a lot of leaders.
Yeah, and it's very genuine. That's the thing. Like the interaction you're talking about, when some dude is yelling from the upper bowl, it's not like Ryan knows he has Twitter or that he's going to post about it, or just in the moment he's like, "Yeah, come on down, let's hang out." And I think that's the kind of inclusive atmosphere. I also just think that's what's powering, if you think about everything he's trying to do and he and Ashley are trying to do by bringing hockey to the state, by redeveloping all of the downtown, by taking this other city just 15 minutes south of here and creating an entire sports district there as well. Like it's all about how do we give back and do good by the most people.
You have one of the most unique titles of anyone I've ever met. It's just executive. And I don't mean just, it's a big title, but
People who need titles are insecure people, I think. I don't need or want a title. Apparently I need one occasionally. I think one's work shows for oneself, and
so you don't even have a title. That's actually not your title. You're just
that is, I mean, they have to have something to put in the newspaper, I guess. But I just don't care about a title. I never have. I don't know that I've ever really had one. Could I go demand a title? Of course. I don't care, and I mean that sincerely, and I'm not trying to be flippant when I say, people who need a title are insecure people. I'm not saying titles are dumb, but we used to joke, Ryan's brother Jared Smith used to say that anyone that had strategic or global in their title was someone you should fire immediately, right? It was just kind of this joke that, like, if you're trying to make yourself sound big and puffed up and important, what we really care about is getting the job done. One thing that I loved about the tech world is someone say, "What do you do?" And it wasn't like, "Oh, I'm the director of this or the VP of that." It's, "I'm in marketing, I'm in sales, because that goes to one of these values we've always had, which is one team. We're all in it together. So why are we trying to create hierarchy where there is none, or create titles or differentiation that we don't need? Be a secure human being, be a good human being, do your work. That will speak for itself.
There's this phrase everyone's heard. It's like being in the room where it happens. And there's this really
Hamilton.
From Hamilton. There's this really great quote that Ryan Smith said about you, which is that you're the kind of person that makes it happen in whatever room he's in. And I wonder, how can I just make things happen, even if I don't feel like I'm in the coolest, best, most exciting spot? Like, how can I just have an impact wherever I am?
I love this principle. Another way to say it is never get blocked, right? If you know where you want to go, but you think that there's only one path up the mountain, and then as soon as you hit any resistance, you're like, "Well, I can't make it up that trail." That's the dumbest way you could look at your life, right? If the goal is to get to the top of the mountain, build a new trail. Find a different way. The goal isn't walk up this trail to the top of the mountain. The goal is get to the top of the mountain. So I'm not trying to be dumb in answering your question with the same words you just used. It's like when you go to the dictionary and they define it with the word, and you're like, "I don't know what that means still." When you say, how do you make it happen? My answer is make it happen. Don't get blocked. There is always a way. And if I could just imprint that on everybody's soul, I would. There's always a way. Like, find a way to make it happen. I don't know. But what happens is we get so tied to what we think should happen, or the path we think we need to walk toward the end goal, that when that's interrupted, we think the goal is interrupted. No, it's not. The way that you thought you were going to accomplish the goal has been interrupted. But truly dedicated people will find a way, a different way, but they will find a way to get to that goal. And I think that's so beautiful. If you can just inculcate people with this idea that you can make it happen, then they will find that they are capable of bigger and more incredible things than they ever dreamt, because they find a way to never get blocked. Now, once in a while, that means you have to ask for help, and that's okay too. I always tell people that I'm working with, one of my jobs is to remove obstacles from your path. So you also need to know when to raise your hand. I want you to fight as hard as you can, but sometimes you're going to need me to come in and just be like, boop, let's just move that rock out of your way. And that's okay too, because part of it is knowing who to ask, knowing when to ask, knowing how to get it done, but you never give up.
I've heard you talk about fires and giving advice to young people. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, look, I heard, this is not something original to me, but I heard this idea about fires, right? You can be someone who puts out fires, or you can be someone who builds fires, and you will always get more credit for building fires than putting them out. I'll tell you what I mean by that. One of the greatest accomplishments of my entire career is something that didn't happen. I stopped something from happening that could have had a massively detrimental effect on the things I was working on. Well, nobody knows about that. I can't prove it. I can't it's not like, oh, show me this amazing thing. I put out an insanely big fire and get no credit for that ever. Or there are a lot of other areas in my career where I started a fire, and then we poured fuel on that fire, and then that became this massive bonfire that took over the whole place, and everybody knows what that is. So the point is, if you're early in your career and you can choose a path to take a job that is putting out fires, or take a job lighting fires and stoking new things and new ideas and bringing in business, I would say, now you need both, and I'm not saying we, just ignore it. Don't put out the fire because no one's going to care. You got to be good at both. You have to contribute to the team. But I would say if I'm a young person trying to start my career, know that you'll always get more credit for building fires than for being the one who puts them out.
You called landing the Utah Mammoth in Utah 174 days of chaos. What was that like? What happened and how? I mean, there's such a small amount of people in the world that have ever gotten a sports team, helped get a sports team in a city, let alone moved a sports team to a new city. How did that come together?
This is a cliche answer, but true. It's all about having an incredible team of people. What's so amazing about the culture that Ryan Ashley Smith have engendered is that it literally was a divide and conquer. It wasn't that people weren't talking, but everyone was so busy. It was like, you go do this, you go do this, you go do this, you go do this. And then people would come back later and say, okay, we did it. You know what I mean? But it's if you have the people that can get it done. There's a great book called Who Not How, right? And it focuses on this idea that you can spend all your life figuring out how to do something, or you can figure out who are the people that know how to do it. And you will be so much more efficient if you focus on who can help you do it, rather than reinventing the wheel by figuring out how to do it. When we did this, it was figuring out, how do you bring a team here? How do you do that? Or who knows how to do the branding? Okay, let's go work with those people. Who knows how to launch a team? Well, nobody, because no one's done it in 174 days. But there are people who have launched teams, who've done things. How do you figure out the who's instead of try to reinvent everything with how? And if you can populate with your team with people who know to figure out the who's, not how's, it changes everything.
What makes hockey such a great fit in Utah?
Hockey's an amazing... Have you watched much hockey? Honestly, I think that anyone who's been in the arena for a game never leaves the same. Like, we talk about, like, how do we get people to be fans? Bring them in the building once, and they will be fans for life. Hockey, I think, is an amazing fit. One, we're a winter sports town. The Olympics in 2002, bringing them back in 2034. Two, there's a whole different demographic of this entire state that cares about hockey. It's a different fan base. I think we have 7% of season ticket holders overlap between the Jazz and the Mammoth. So it really is a new fan base that is now coming in, that new in many ways. And then it's a sport that is completely active the entire time. And it's so fun to watch because there's no stoppage in play, there's no pause, there's no kicking it around. I mean, literally the puck is just going. And so I think people love the opportunity to just engage in the entire experience.
I love the phrase you've talked about in regards to the team of being community obsessed. Well, like what does that mean from an NHL perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of our 5 values: tacos, transparency, all in, community obsessed, one team, and scrappy. And community obsessed, this really is about what's right for the community and what do we do that will actually bless the most lives. Again, it would have been very easy to build the sports and entertainment district somewhere else, but we wanted to say, how can we do something really meaningful here? And so the decision that the Smiths made was, how do we do the right thing for not just the city, the county, the state, but the region long term, looking 50, 60, 100 years down the line. And it's what's right for the community. And when you keep that in, again, going back to this idea of decision-making frameworks, that changes how you make decisions because you have a framework that is very clear and it makes decision-making so much easier.
What's been the most powerful moment so far with having the NHL team in Salt Lake City?
Oh, without question, it was the day we introduced the team to Utah. Look, a lot of people were questioning, can Utah handle hockey? Can we have a second sport out of the Big Four? Are there enough fans here? And we had no time in which to do it. But we wanted these players, we wanted the team to know that there was a home for them in Utah. In Phoenix, they'd been in a rough situation. They're playing in a small little arena. Fans aren't really showing up. It's not the NHL experience they signed up for. We want to show them that Utah is different. And so we said, let's fill the arena, 18,000 people, for an event where we just welcome the team. And there were a lot of people who said, I don't think you can fill it. You should try to just put curtains in the upper bowl. You should whatever. And, again, I told you I worked with dreamers. Like, Ryan Smith would not hear that. He's like, we have to fill the arena. It was the craziest thing I have ever seen. Every seat is filled. The ice is laid down, and there are, the entire rink is filled with seats. There are thousands of people out on the patio who can't even get into the building because there's so many people that came out. And that was the moment that you realize this was a massive risk. You trust your gut, you believe in something, and you hope that you're right. And then everybody showed up. And that's what's so cool about Utah is Utah shows up.
Outside of family, who's the person you most admire?
I'm going to give you who I most admire right now. I have a dear friend, Caroline Klein, who by the time this airs will have probably died of cancer. She has taught me both how to live and how to die. And she lived her life so completely that at 40 she's done more than most people in their whole lives. And she talked about how when she was diagnosed with terminal cancer, it was really permission to live. And I think sometimes we wait so long thinking we have time, and I love that she taught me both how to live and how to die with grace.
If you could plant one idea into people's heads, what would it be?
Why not now? It's crazy how often we take time to decide something or to do it, or we linger. I would love to inculcate in everybody's mind when they're thinking about doing something, just ask yourself the phrase, why not now?
What's the hardest thing you've ever accomplished?
I think being myself. I know that usually people are going to talk about some big thing they've done. I was at the Olympics in Paris a year ago, and I met somebody who was the most comfortable person I've ever met, comfortable with themselves. And I thought, with all the insecurities and anxieties and am I enough, or is my Have I done enough professionally? Is my body good enough physically? Is my whatever, on and on and on. Everyone's insecure, and I think the hardest thing that we can do is sort of accept us for us. Not that we settle, but we want to become the best version of ourselves. But I think it's a lesson I'm trying to learn, but one that I admire so deeply in the few people who've done it, and I think most people never take the time to do it.
What accomplishment are you most proud of?
The thing I think I will look back on as the most noble thing I've ever done is working with, we call them the Utah Jazz Scholars. They're a group of mostly first-generation college students from financially disadvantaged backgrounds who Ryan and Ashley Smith gave full cost of attendance scholarships to. And they're the most remarkable group of humans I've ever known. And I can rarely talk about them without crying. I think it's the most noble thing I've ever worked on.
If when you die, you meet God, what do you hope he says to you?
I'll be so happy I met him instead of the devil.
Selfie?
No. Look, I am from the Christian tradition. I think that there's only one time that I'm familiar with that God talks about this judgment day, and it's where he separates the sheep and the goats. And the sheep are going to heaven, the goats are going to hell, and they don't look, neither group looks around and says like, oh, this makes sense. We've all got a bunch of neck tattoos and gauges and drank a lot, right? And the other group isn't like, oh, good, yeah, we make sense. We went to church all the time. We served at the soup kitchen. They're both just kind of like, okay, why me? And then they ask God, wait, like, why are we here? And he said, because when I was hungry, you gave me food. When I was naked, you gave me clothes. When I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink, and vice versa, the other group. You didn't give me anything to drink. But even then, the group that like did good things is like, dude, thank you so much. I don't think that was me because I've never met you. And he said, if you did it to the least among you, you did it to me. And I hope if I meet God, I don't think he's going to talk about, did you lie, cheat, and steal? I'm not saying you have permission to do all those things. But it appears that the only thing he really cares about is, were we there for other people? Did we love enough, and were we aware enough to give? And I'm sure I've failed way more times in my life than I want. But I don't think he's going to care so much about the things we think he does. And I think he's going to care most about, did you give, and were you aware enough to give?
And in the words of Clay Christensen, how will you measure your life?
One of my favorite things that I've seen lately is that life was not meant to be understood. It is meant to be felt. I want to measure my life by how much I felt it, how much I was in the moment, and how much I helped other people do the same. I think we waste so much of our lives trying to understand everything. Life was not meant to be understood. It was meant to be felt. And if we can help people feel like they're alive. Oscar Wilde said, to live is the rarest thing in the world. Most people exist. That is all. I want to not only like exist, or I want to live, but I want to help other people live. I want to create atmospheres and experiences and places where people can really live.
It's beautiful. Appreciate you, man.
Good to be with you.
Divot.
On next week's episode.
You shouldn't expect things to be handed to you. Then great founders will find a way. I mean, even when I think about some of these companies we've backed early, the ones that really just were outsiders to Silicon Valley, they what did they do? They got a one-way ticket. They flew here. They hunted people down. They did everything possible, and like that's what you got to do.